The moment a room full of millionaires looked away was the exact moment one waitress decided she could not. The words hung in the air like a storm cloud nobody wanted to acknowledge. Conversation stopped. Crystal glasses rested motionless above white linen tablecloths. Even the soft piano music drifting through the ballroom seemed quieter than before. Beneath towering chandeliers and walls of glass overlooking the Manhattan skyline, hundreds of guests stood frozen in place. At the center of the room stood Ethan Harrison, billionaire founder, media favorite, and one of the most powerful businessmen in America. Standing a few feet away was his wife, Olivia Harrison, 7 months pregnant and visibly uncomfortable beneath the attention of an entire ballroom. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody wanted to become part of whatever was unfolding between them. Wealth has a strange effect on people. It can make them admire power. Sometimes it can make them fear it. And on that night, fear was winning. Olivia lowered her eyes briefly and placed a hand against her stomach. Her elegant blue evening dress shimmered beneath the lights, but her smile had disappeared long ago. Ethan's expression was tense, the kind of tension that builds slowly over hours before finally finding a way to escape. Nearby executives exchanged nervous glances. Investors pretended to focus on their drinks. Reporters lowered their voices. Everyone sensed that something was wrong. Nobody wanted to be the first person to step forward. Except Naomi Carter. Naomi stood near the edge of the ballroom, carrying a serving tray balanced effortlessly in one hand. At 28 years old, she had worked hundreds of events like this one. Charity galas, corporate fundraisers, luxury celebrations. She had seen powerful people at their best and at their worst. Most nights, she remained invisible. That was part of the job. Guests remembered the wine. They remembered the speeches. They rarely remembered the waitress. Tonight felt different. Across the room, Naomi noticed something few others seemed willing to acknowledge. Olivia looked frightened, not of danger, but of disappointment. The kind of disappointment that comes from someone whose opinion matters too much. Ethan said something quietly. Olivia responded. The conversation grew more intense. Still nobody moved. A man near the front table looked away. A woman beside him adjusted her necklace and stared at the floor. The room had made its decision. Silence was easier. Naomi felt a knot tighten in her chest. She knew that feeling. She remembered being 14 years old and watching adults stay silent when someone needed support. She remembered promising herself she would never do the same. The promise had followed her into adulthood. It followed her now. Suddenly, Ethan stepped away from a group of guests and faced Olivia directly. The room seemed to shrink. Every eye turned toward them. Every voice disappeared. Somewhere in the distance, a glass clinked against a table. Nobody laughed. Nobody smiled. The celebration that had filled the ballroom only minutes earlier felt very far away. Naomi looked around. Surely someone would say something. Surely a friend, an executive, a family member would step forward. Nobody did. That was when she realized something important. Courage rarely announces itself. It usually arrives disguised as a simple decision. One step, one word, one choice. Naomi placed her tray on a nearby service station and took a slow breath. She had no idea that 30 minutes from now an entire family would be changed forever. She had no idea that one conversation would expose a secret nobody expected. She only knew one thing. A room full of powerful people had chosen silence. And she was no longer willing to join them. 30 minutes earlier, the evening had looked flawless. The Grand Regent Hotel shimmered beneath thousands of warm lights, its glass walls reflecting the Manhattan skyline like a painting brought to life. Luxury cars lined the entrance. Cameras flashed outside. Inside, guests in tailored suits and designer gowns moved through the ballroom with easy confidence. Laughter floated above the music. Champagne glasses sparkled beneath crystal chandeliers. Everything about the event suggested success. It was supposed to be one of the most celebrated charity galas of the year. At the center of the attention stood Ethan Harrison. Reporters followed him from conversation to conversation. Investors waited for opportunities to shake his hand. Business leaders competed for a few minutes of his time. Ethan was accustomed to this kind of admiration. Years of success had made it feel normal. His technology empire stretched across multiple industries. Financial magazines called him visionary. Television networks invited him to discuss innovation and leadership. Wherever he went, people listened. Ethan carried himself with the confidence of a man who believed he could solve any problem placed in front of him. Most days, that confidence served him well. Tonight, however, something felt different. Earlier that afternoon, Ethan had received a phone call that unsettled him. Nobody in the ballroom knew about it. Not the investors, not the reporters, not even Olivia. Since arriving at the gala, he had checked his phone repeatedly. Every vibration pulled his attention away from conversations. Every unanswered question added another layer of pressure. The smile he showed guests remained convincing, but it required more effort than usual. Across the ballroom, Olivia Harrison greeted donors and supporters with grace. Her pregnancy had become impossible to hide, and many guests offered warm congratulations as they passed. She thanked each person politely. She smiled when expected. She posed for photographs. Yet beneath her calm exterior, she carried worries of her own. During the previous week, she had noticed changes in Ethan. Longer hours, less sleep, more distance. Whenever she asked if something was wrong, he insisted everything was fine. Olivia wanted to believe him. Still, a quiet concern remained. Nearby, Naomi Carter moved through the crowd carrying a silver tray filled with sparkling water. She had worked enough events to recognize the difference between genuine happiness and carefully managed appearances. Wealth could hide many things, but not everything. As she passed between tables, she noticed Ethan checking his phone again. She noticed Olivia watching him from across the room. She noticed how quickly both looked away whenever their eyes met. Small details. Easy to miss. Yet details often tell the most important stories. A few minutes later, the evening's keynote presentation began. Guests took their seats. The ballroom lights dimmed slightly. A spotlight illuminated the stage. Applause echoed through the room as organizers introduced the night's fundraising goals. Millions of dollars would be pledged before the event ended. The audience responded enthusiastically. Yet even as applause filled the ballroom, Ethan appeared distracted. His attention drifted repeatedly toward the entrance. Olivia noticed. So did Naomi. Then came another vibration from Ethan's phone. He glanced down. His expression changed instantly. Not dramatically, just enough for someone paying attention to notice. The confidence disappeared for a fraction of a second. Concern replaced it. Ethan stood and quietly stepped away from the table. Olivia hesitated before following him. Naomi watched the moment unfold while refilling glasses nearby. She had no idea what the message contained. She had no idea that a hidden truth was moving steadily toward the center of the evening. She only knew that the perfect atmosphere surrounding the gala suddenly felt fragile, like a beautiful piece of glass developing its first invisible crack. And sometimes the smallest crack is all it takes for everything else to change. Most people never noticed Naomi Carter. That was one of the reasons she noticed everything. While guests admired the skyline and executives discussed investments, Naomi paid attention to details. She noticed who thanked the staff and who ignored them. She noticed which couples laughed naturally and which ones smiled only when cameras appeared. She noticed the small things that revealed larger truths. Tonight, those small things were everywhere. After Ethan stepped away from the ballroom and Olivia quietly followed him, Naomi returned to her work. She moved between tables, refilled water glasses, and collected empty plates. Yet her attention kept drifting toward the hallway where the couple had disappeared. Something felt wrong. Not dangerous, just heavy. The kind of feeling that settles over a room before anyone understands why. Naomi understood that. Feeling better than most people. Life had taught her to recognize it. Growing up in Baltimore, she had learned early that the strongest people were not always the loudest. Sometimes they were the ones carrying burdens nobody else could see. Her mother had been one of those people, working 2 jobs, raising children, solving problems without complaints. Naomi never forgot the lesson. Pay attention. People reveal their struggles long before they talk about them. At 28 years old, Naomi still lived by that principle. Most guests assumed she was simply a waitress. They never imagined that she spent mornings taking online courses and evenings studying social work and family counseling. They never knew she volunteered at a community center on weekends. They never asked. People often saw uniforms before they saw human beings. Naomi had stopped expecting anything different. Near the ballroom entrance, she spotted Olivia returning alone. That immediately caught her attention. The pregnant woman walked slowly back toward the main event, but something had changed. Her smile looked forced. Her shoulders seemed heavier. She greeted a donor, thanked a sponsor, and posed for a photograph, yet her eyes appeared distant. Naomi watched carefully. A few minutes later, Olivia excused herself and moved toward a quiet corner near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Nobody followed her. Nobody seemed to notice. Naomi did. As she carried a tray past the area, she saw Olivia staring out at the lights of Manhattan. One hand rested gently against her stomach. The other held her phone. For a moment, Olivia looked as though she might cry. Then she quickly composed herself and slipped the phone into her purse. The expression vanished almost instantly. Anyone glancing briefly would have missed it. Naomi did not. Before she could think further about it, another server approached with a request for assistance at one of the VIP tables. Naomi returned to work. Yet the image remained in her mind. Across the ballroom, Ethan eventually returned as well. His smile was back. His posture was confident. To everyone else, he appeared completely in control. But Naomi noticed something different. Ethan and Olivia no longer looked at each other. Not once. During speeches, during applause, during conversations with guests, an invisible wall seemed to separate them. The contrast felt impossible to ignore. A husband and wife standing only a few feet apart, yet somehow miles away. Then another subtle moment occurred. Olivia placed a hand against her lower back and briefly closed her eyes. It lasted only seconds. When she opened them again, she forced another smile. Nobody reacted. Nobody seemed concerned. Naomi felt a quiet sense of unease. She did not know what secret was hiding beneath the surface of the evening. She did not know why Ethan seemed increasingly tense or why Olivia appeared determined to hide her emotions. She only knew that beneath the glamour, beneath the speeches, beneath the wealth and celebration, a family was struggling. And whatever was causing that struggle was moving steadily toward the center of the night. If Ethan Harrison had one weakness, it was the belief that responsibility belonged entirely on his shoulders. For years, that belief had helped him build an empire. Investors admired it. Employees respected it. Business magazines celebrated it. Yet the same trait that created success could also create isolation. Ethan rarely asked for help. He rarely shared fears. When problems appeared, he carried them alone. Tonight, that habit was becoming dangerous. As the gala continued around him, he moved through conversations with practiced confidence. He shook hands. He thanked donors. He smiled for photographs. Every gesture looked natural. Every answer sounded polished. Nobody would have guessed that his thoughts were somewhere else entirely. The phone call he had received earlier refused to leave his mind. Each time he glanced across the ballroom and saw Olivia, the pressure seemed to grow heavier. Olivia noticed it too. She knew her husband well enough to recognize when something was wrong. The problem was that Ethan would not talk about it. For nearly a week, he had been building walls around himself. Small walls at first. Longer hours at work. Shorter conversations at home. Sleepless nights. Missed meals. Then, larger walls. Avoided questions. Forced smiles. Sudden changes of subject. Olivia had tried to be patient. She understood the pressures that came with leading a company worth billions of dollars. But tonight felt different. Tonight, something seemed to be pushing Ethan toward a breaking point. Across the ballroom, Naomi continued serving guests while quietly observing. The evening had taught her one important lesson long ago. People often reveal themselves during moments of stress. Not because they intend to, because pressure removes the masks they normally wear. Naomi watched Ethan greet a group of investors near the stage. Outwardly, he appeared composed. Yet she noticed his jaw tighten whenever his phone vibrated. She noticed him checking the screen and immediately locking it again. She noticed Olivia watching from a distance, concern growing in her eyes. Then another moment caught Naomi's attention. A woman approached Olivia and congratulated her on the pregnancy. Olivia smiled warmly and thanked her. The interaction seemed ordinary. Yet after the woman walked away, Olivia briefly touched her purse and looked down. The smile vanished. Only for a second. Then it returned. Naomi had seen enough human struggles to recognize hidden worry when she saw it. Whatever burden Olivia carried, she was carrying it alone. Meanwhile, the gala organizers announced the largest fundraising pledge of the evening. Applause thundered across the ballroom. Guests stood to celebrate. Cameras flashed. Ethan joined the applause, but his attention drifted once again toward his phone. Seconds later, another message arrived. This time his expression changed noticeably. The color seemed to drain from his face. Olivia saw it immediately. Their eyes met across the room. Neither smiled. Neither looked away. The connection lasted only a moment before Ethan turned and headed toward a quieter section near the ballroom windows. Olivia hesitated. Then she followed. Naomi watched both disappear into the crowd. A strange silence settled inside her. Not around the room. Inside herself. Instinct. Experience. Something she could not fully explain. She glanced around the ballroom. Guests remained, focused on speeches and celebrations. Nobody seemed concerned. Nobody appeared curious. Yet Naomi could not shake the feeling that the real story of the evening was happening somewhere beyond the spotlight. The music continued. The applause faded. The city lights shimmered beyond the glass walls. And as Ethan and Olivia disappeared from view once again, the distance between them seemed smaller than ever physically and greater than ever emotionally. Whatever secret had arrived through that phone call was now pulling both of them toward a moment neither could avoid. When Ethan and Olivia disappeared into the quieter section beyond the ballroom, the celebration continued without them. Donors applauded speeches. Cameras captured smiling faces. Glasses clinked beneath the chandeliers. Yet Naomi found herself glancing toward the hallway every few minutes. The uneasy feeling had not faded. If anything, it had grown stronger. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Neither Ethan nor Olivia returned. Finally, Naomi was asked to deliver a bottle of sparkling water to a private lounge reserved for VIP guests. The request took her toward the same corridor where the couple had gone. As she approached the lounge area, she slowed her pace. Not because she intended to listen, because she heard voices. One voice sounded strained. The other sounded exhausted. Through a partially open doorway, she recognized Ethan and Olivia. They were standing several feet apart inside a quiet sitting room overlooking the city. Neither noticed her. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Olivia stood near the window holding her purse tightly against her side. "Why did you not tell me sooner?" Ethan asked. His voice was not loud. It was hurt, confused. Olivia lowered her eyes. "Because I was trying to protect you." Ethan looked away. "Protect me from what?" Olivia hesitated. For several seconds, she said nothing. The silence felt heavier than any argument. Naomi immediately stepped back from the doorway. She had heard enough to know the conversation was private. Yet one sentence remained in her mind. "I was trying to protect you." A few moments later, she continued toward the service station and returned to work. The gala entered its final hour. Guests gathered near the stage for closing remarks. Major donors prepared their final pledges. Organizers celebrated another successful year. On the surface, everything appeared normal. Beneath the surface, something was changing. When Ethan and Olivia finally returned to the ballroom, the distance between them felt even greater than before. Ethan moved toward a group of investors. Olivia remained near the back of the room. Neither seemed interested in pretending anymore. Naomi noticed another detail. Olivia looked tired. Not physically tired. Emotionally tired. The kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying a burden alone for too long. Several guests approached to congratulate her on the baby. She thanked each one politely. She smiled. She laughed when expected. Yet her eyes never matched the expression on her face. Naomi recognized the difference immediately. Then something unexpected happened. As Olivia reached into her purse for a handkerchief, a folded medical document slipped free and fell to the floor beside her chair. Olivia did not notice. Neither did anyone else. Naomi happened to be passing nearby. She quickly bent down and picked it up. "Ma'am," she said softly. Olivia turned. The moment she saw the paper in Naomi's hand, her face changed. Not with anger. With alarm. Genuine alarm. Naomi immediately handed it back. "I am sorry. I did not mean to look." Olivia accepted the document and forced a smile. "Thank you." Yet her hands trembled slightly as she placed it back inside her purse. Before walking away, Naomi noticed only one thing. A hospital logo printed across the top of the page. Nothing more. She could not read the details. She did not try. Still, the image stayed with her. Hospital records. Secret phone calls. A worried husband. A frightened wife. Pieces of a puzzle were beginning to appear. Across the ballroom, Ethan looked toward Olivia. For the first time all evening, she looked away before he did. The gesture lasted only seconds, but it felt significant. Naomi sensed it too. Whatever truth was hiding beneath the perfect image of this wealthy family was far more serious than anyone realized. And Judging by the fear she had just seen in Olivia's eyes, the secret was running out of time to remain hidden. The final presentation of the evening had barely begun when the tension that had been building all night finally surfaced. Guests gathered near the stage. Donors prepared for photographs. Organizers thanked sponsors. From a distance, the gala still appeared successful. Up close, however, the cracks were becoming impossible to ignore. Ethan stood near the front of the ballroom, speaking with several board members when Olivia approached him quietly. Naomi happened to be serving drinks nearby. She was not trying to listen. The room had simply grown quieter. "We need to talk," Olivia said softly. Ethan looked at her. The strain in his expression returned immediately. "Not now." Olivia hesitated. "It cannot wait." Those 4 words changed something. Several people nearby glanced in their direction. Ethan lowered his voice, but frustration was becoming harder to hide. "This is not the place." Olivia looked down briefly before meeting his eyes again. "That is exactly why I have been trying to protect you." The sentence landed heavily. Naomi froze for a moment. It was the same phrase she had overheard earlier in the private lounge. Around them, conversations began to fade. People sensed a private disagreement becoming public. Nobody wanted to stare, yet almost everyone did. Ethan stepped away from the group and faced Olivia directly. His voice remained controlled, but the emotion behind it was impossible to miss. "Protect me from what?" he asked. Olivia tightened her grip on her purse. For a second, she looked as though she might answer. Then she stopped herself. The silence stretched. Guests exchanged nervous glances. Nobody moved. Nobody intervened. Naomi felt the same knot tightening in her chest again. Olivia appeared overwhelmed. Ethan appeared hurt and confused. Neither seemed able to find the words they needed. Then Olivia shifted her weight slightly and placed a hand against her stomach. It was a small gesture, but Naomi noticed immediately. So did Ethan. His expression softened for a brief moment before frustration returned. The unanswered questions had been haunting him all evening. "Please tell me what is going on," he said. Olivia looked away. "I cannot." The response only made the tension worse. Across the ballroom, the music had stopped. Organizers delayed the next announcement. The entire room seemed trapped between curiosity and discomfort. Naomi looked around. Once again, nobody stepped forward. Investors remained silent. Executives remained silent. Friends remained silent. Everyone seemed to be waiting for someone else to act. That was the moment Naomi made her decision. She carefully set her serving tray onto a nearby table and walked toward the couple. The movement alone drew attention. Guests turned to watch. Ethan noticed her approaching and appeared surprised. Olivia looked equally confused. Naomi stopped a respectful distance away. Her heart was racing, but her voice remained calm. "Excuse me," she said gently. "I know this is not my place." Ethan stared at her. Several guests held their breath. Naomi continued before fear could stop her. "But sometimes when people care about each other, they stop listening because they are both carrying too much pain." The ballroom fell completely silent. Nobody expected a waitress to speak. Nobody expected courage to arrive wearing a black uniform. Yet there she stood, calm, respectful, unafraid. And for the first time all evening, both Ethan and Olivia stopped arguing long enough to listen. For a moment, nobody spoke. The silence that followed Naomi's words felt different from the silence that had filled the ballroom earlier. Before, it had been the silence of discomfort. Now it was the silence of attention. Ethan looked at Naomi as if seeing her for the first time. Olivia stared at her with equal surprise. Around them, hundreds of guests remained perfectly still. Nobody wanted to interrupt whatever happened next. Naomi took a slow breath. She had not planned any of this. She was not trying to embarrass anyone. She simply recognized something she had seen before. Two people standing on opposite sides of the same pain. "I apologize if I am overstepping," she said gently. "But sometimes when people stop sharing their fears, they start assuming the worst about each other." Ethan's expression tightened. The words struck closer than Naomi realized. Olivia lowered her eyes. For several seconds, neither responded. Then Olivia surprised everyone. She reached into her purse and removed the folded medical document she had been protecting all evening. Her hands trembled slightly. Not from fear. From exhaustion. The exhaustion of carrying a secret alone. Ethan immediately recognized the paper. "What is that?" he asked quietly. Olivia looked at him. This time she did not look away. "The reason I have been trying to protect you." The room seemed to hold its breath. Naomi stepped back slightly. This was no longer her conversation. It belonged to them. Olivia unfolded the document. Tears filled her eyes, but her voice remained steady. 3 weeks ago, my doctor found a complication that required additional monitoring. Ethan's face went pale. What? Olivia nodded. The doctors said the baby is doing well. They are optimistic, but they wanted more tests. Ethan stared at her. The confusion in his eyes quickly transformed into something else. Hurt, not because of the news itself, because she had carried it alone. Why did you not tell me? He asked. Olivia looked down at the paper. Because your company was going through the merger negotiations. You were barely sleeping. You were carrying so much pressure already. Her voice cracked slightly. I thought if I waited until I had more answers, I could spare you one more burden. The truth settled over the ballroom like a wave. Suddenly, every strange moment from the evening made sense. The hospital document, the secret phone calls, the distance between them. Olivia had not been hiding something from Ethan. She had been trying to shield him from worry. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. The realization hit him hard. All night he had assumed the secrecy meant distrust. All night he had been demanding answers without understanding the sacrifice behind the silence. Olivia had been protecting him. Naomi watched as the pieces finally came together. Not through confrontation, through understanding. Ethan looked at his wife. For the first time that evening, the frustration disappeared completely. In its place was regret. Deep regret. He stepped closer. You should never have carried that alone, he said softly. Olivia smiled sadly. I know. Across the ballroom, several guests quietly wiped away tears. The tension that had dominated the evening was dissolving. In its place came something far more powerful. Truth. And as Ethan looked at the woman he loved and finally understood what she had been trying to do, he realized the biggest mistake of the night was not a business decision, not a phone call, and not a misunderstanding. It was forgetting that the people who love us most often carry burdens we cannot see. The ballroom remained silent long after Olivia finished speaking. The city lights beyond the windows seemed distant now, reduced to a soft glow behind reflections of people reconsidering everything they thought they understood. Ethan stood motionless. The medical document remained in Olivia's hands, but it no longer felt like a secret. It felt like the truth finally stepping into the light. For several seconds, he could not find the words. Throughout his career, Ethan had negotiated billion-dollar agreements, faced hostile competitors, and delivered speeches before thousands of people. Yet standing in front of his wife, he felt completely unprepared. Not because he lacked intelligence, because he finally understood how much fear she had carried alone. Olivia looked exhausted. The pressure of hiding her worries, protecting her husband, and managing her own uncertainty had taken a toll she could no longer conceal. Ethan saw it now. He wondered how many opportunities he had missed to simply ask how she was feeling. How many evenings he had spent chasing business problems while the most important person in his life struggled quietly beside him. The realization hurt. Nearby guests remained respectfully silent. No one seemed interested in gossip anymore. Something deeper had taken hold of the room. Human beings recognized sincerity when they saw it. And what stood before them was not a billionaire executive and his wife. It was a family trying to find its way back to each other. Ethan took a slow step forward. Then another. I am sorry, he said softly. The words were simple, but they carried more weight than any speech he had given that year. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. Ethan shook his head. I kept demanding answers when I should have been asking how you were doing. His voice cracked slightly. I was so focused on my own worries that I stopped seeing yours. Across the room, Naomi felt a quiet sense of relief. She had not fixed anything. The truth had done that. All she had done was create enough space for people to hear each other again. Sometimes that was enough. Ethan reached for Olivia's hand. She let him take it. The gesture looked small, yet it transformed the atmosphere of the entire evening. The invisible wall that had separated them all night finally began to disappear. Olivia smiled through tears. I did not want to add to your stress, she admitted. Ethan looked at her and gently shook his head. You are not stress. You are my family. The words landed softly, but they changed everything. Several guests quietly looked away to give the couple privacy. Others smiled. A few wiped tears from their eyes. The tension that had dominated the gala for hours was gone. In its place came something much stronger. Understanding. Ethan carefully folded the medical document and handed it back to Olivia. "We will handle this together," he said. "Whatever comes next, we handle it together." Olivia nodded. For the first time all evening, the smile on her face looked genuine. Not performed, not forced, real. As applause slowly began somewhere near the back of the ballroom, others joined in. Not for a business achievement, not for a fundraising milestone, for something far more meaningful. A family choosing connection over fear. And standing quietly near a table filled with untouched champagne glasses, Naomi watched the moment unfold, unaware that before the night ended, Ethan Harrison would have one more thing he needed to say to the woman who helped make it possible. The gala ended differently than anyone had expected. The speeches were forgotten. The fundraising totals became secondary. Long after the applause faded, people continued talking about the moment when honesty replaced misunderstanding and compassion defeated silence. Guests slowly began leaving the ballroom. Some headed toward waiting cars. Others lingered near the exits, still discussing what they had witnessed. The atmosphere felt lighter now, not because every problem had disappeared, because the truth no longer had to hide. Olivia sat comfortably beside Ethan near one of the large windows overlooking Manhattan. For the first time all evening, they looked like partners again. They spoke quietly. Sometimes they smiled. Sometimes they simply sat together in peaceful silence. Neither seemed eager to rush away from the moment. Ethan knew there would be doctor's appointments ahead, difficult conversations, uncertainty, but he also knew something else. They would face those challenges together. That changed everything. Across the ballroom, Naomi returned to her work. Empty glasses still needed collecting. Tables still needed clearing. While others reflected on the emotional events of the evening, she quietly completed her responsibilities. She had never expected attention. She certainly had not expected gratitude. Yet as she carried a tray toward the service station, she heard someone call her name. Naomi turned. Ethan was walking toward her. Olivia stood beside him. Several remaining guests paused to watch. Ethan stopped a few feet away. The confident billionaire who had commanded the room earlier now looked remarkably different. More human, more present. For a moment, he searched for the right words. Then he found them. "Thank you," he said simply. Naomi smiled politely. "You do not need to thank me." Ethan shook his head. "Yes, I do." He glanced toward Olivia before continuing. "Tonight, I was so focused on my fears that I stopped listening to the people who cared about me most. You reminded me to do that." Olivia stepped forward. Her eyes were warm. "You helped save us from a mistake we might have regretted for a very long time." Naomi lowered her gaze briefly. Compliments always made her uncomfortable. She had not stepped forward because she wanted recognition. She stepped forward because remaining silent felt wrong. Ethan seemed to understand that. Most people in that room were afraid to say anything, he said. "You were not." Naomi looked around the nearly empty ballroom. "Sometimes people are waiting for someone else to take the first step." Ethan smiled. The answer stayed with him. Throughout his career, he had admired leadership. Tonight he discovered what real courage looked like. It did not arrive with wealth, titles, or influence. It arrived in the form of a waitress willing to speak when everyone else remained quiet. A few minutes later, Naomi gathered her things and prepared to leave. Olivia hugged her gently before saying goodbye. Ethan shook her hand. Neither gesture felt formal. Both felt sincere. As Naomi walked toward the exit, she paused briefly beside the glass wall overlooking the city. Thousands of lights stretched across the darkness. Somewhere beyond them, millions of people were living ordinary lives filled with challenges nobody else could see. Naomi smiled softly and continued toward the door. Behind her, Ethan wrapped an arm around Olivia, and together they looked out at the same skyline. The future remained uncertain. Life always was. Yet they faced it differently now. Together. And that was the lesson hidden inside the entire evening. Power can attract attention. Success can earn admiration. Money can open doors. But none of those things matter if people forget how to listen, how to care, and how to stand beside one another when it matters most. Naomi was not the richest person in the room. She was not the most famous. She was not the most powerful. She was simply the one person brave enough to step forward when everyone else stepped back. And that was enough to change everything.